Guys, it is an honor and a privilege to be able to share this with you. Ethics is something that I think is critical as the foundation for everything else that we do. When I presented this at the Post Academy and when I presented it to other businesses around the area, I always talk about the ethical moral foundation. And we'll talk about that a little bit more. But ethics in investigations, I can't imagine what you guys are facing on a day-to-day basis and how there may be challenges to those ethics. But I know when I worked for the Department of Corrections for about 12 and a half years, then I worked at the Post Academy for about 12 and a half years. It seems like there was constant challenges to that ethical moral foundation. So I'm hoping that we can have a discussion on how to meet those challenges and how to maintain ethics in a world that seems to be slipping away from that. Does that sound good?
Yes.
All right. So this is Stephen Vicchio. He's got a PhD, so he's pretty smart. He said, avoiding wrong behavior is not the same as having integrity any more than simply avoiding bad notes will get a singer to Carnegie Hall. And when you think about that, the singers going to Carnegie Hall are professionals. They are some of the best of the best. So in ethics, we have to do more than just avoid wrong behavior. It has to go deeper than that. So bring it up for questions. How would you define ethics? Anybody want to take a shot? So here's one of the reasons I'm asking. We want to talk about ethics and we want to put it into practice, but unless we get a clear picture of what it is, it's going to be kind of hard to do that. I'm a firearms trainer, and there are 4 fundamental firearms rules everybody has to know. And I will ask at the beginning of my class, how many of you are safe with a gun? And a bunch of people will raise their hands. And then I will say, what are the 4 fundamental firearms rules that are universal across America? Boy Scouts taught them, the military teaches them, everybody teaches them. So if you've ever been through one of those programs, you have been taught those 4 fundamental principles. And 9 times out of 10, nobody can tell me what they are. So here's my supposition. If you can't tell me what the rules are to be safe, then how can you be sure that you're safe? Same with ethics. If I don't have a definition of what ethics are, then how do I know my ethics are in place? And how do I know that I'm maintaining them in a world where ethics is failing and falling to the sidelines? Is that safe to say?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Gave you plenty of time to think. Anybody come up with a definition for ethics? I have one. If you don't, it's okay. So next point there, how do you determine your ethical standards unless I've got that definition? All right, here we go. Merriam-Webster, current day dictionary. A set of moral principles, a theory or system of moral values, the principles of conduct governing an individual or a group, a consciousness of moral importance, a guiding philosophy. Can I just tell you that those, for me, don't quite hit the mark for what an ethical moral foundation is? It sounds kind of new agey, modern, kind of slipshod. That's just me. I may be wrong. So I did a little bit of research. And did you know that before the Merriam-Webster dictionary, there was a different guy, Noah Webster? So I looked up the meaning ethics in the Noah Webster dictionary. 1828 is when this was published. You ready for this? The doctrines of morality or social manners, the science of moral philosophy, which teaches men their duty and the reason of it. It's a system of moral principles, a system of rules for regulating the actions and the manners of men in society. I see a vast difference between the first set of definitions and this set. Do you guys?
Absolutely.
What would you say is the major difference?
I think this one's more targeted. I mean, for me, this makes more sense versus the other one, as you said, sort of esoteric and out there.
Yeah, esoteric. That was one of the words I was searching for. This one is much more straightforward. This speaks, hey, everybody needs this. Everybody should have this. The first one kind of says, well, we hope you adopt one, and if you adopt one, you should follow these guidelines. But this one is almost more insistent. And I wonder if we haven't lost something between 1828 and today. Just a theory.
You think?
Crazy, just a theory. So the French writer Alexis de Tocqueville, after visiting America in 1831, said this: "I sought for the greatness of the United States in her commodious harbors, her ample rivers, her fertile fields, her boundless forests, and it was not there. I sought for it in her rich mines, her vast world commerce, her public school systems, in her institutions of higher learning, and it was not there. I looked for it in her democratic Congress and her matchless Constitution, and it was not there. Not until I went into the churches of America and heard her pulpits flaming with righteousness did I understand the secret of her genius and the power within it. America is great because America is good, and if America ever ceases to be good, America will cease to be great." Man, what a great quote.
That's profound.
What a great quote. And maybe a little bit on the prophetic side, if I can go that far. So that was his view of America. John Maxwell said this: "The ethical standards are at risk in our society today, even in the church." Now, we just noticed de Tocqueville qualified the greatness of America by saying it came from the churches. And now John Maxwell recently said it's at risk even in our churches. Where once our decisions were based on ethics, now ethics are based on our decisions. Can you read that again, that quote, just in your own mind? Where once our decisions were based on ethics, now ethics are based on our decisions. Man, wrap your head around that. The current drive in society and in culture and in social media and media itself is pushing us in a direction and saying, no, this is ethical because these are the decisions that we're making. And in actuality, that needs to be turned around. So I'm talking about ethics as a whole, ethics across the nation, but stand by. We're going to get to ethics on your front doorstep as we move forward. We can't not if we're talking about ethics, right?
Right.
John Maxwell finished by saying, "If it's good for me, then it's good," which is kind of a self-serving kind of a, what is my daughter always saying about her generation, an entitlement thing. And I don't think that's how ethics were established or should be looked at. Then John Maxwell finishes, "Where is this trend likely to end?" Well, this was a few years ago that he said this, and I think we've made some great progress since then, but maybe the wrong direction in our ethical stance. The constant attack on true ethical moral standards chips at our foundation and may weaken our resolve to rise above it. You can't escape being affected by it. Everybody will be affected, but what can we control? How we respond. There's a lot of pressure out there. How will we respond to that pressure? Josephson Institute of Ethics. And these guys have some great quotes that I've followed over time. Ethics is about how we meet the challenge of doing the right thing when it will cost us more than we want to pay. It's easy to do the right thing when it's in my best interest. It's easy to do the right thing when everybody else goes along with it. But when doing the right thing is going to cost me, and not only cost me, but cost me more than I want to pay, that's when ethics gets hard. Have you ever been in that situation? I won't ask you for a story, but have you ever been there where your ethical moral foundation is being tested? And if I stand up for my ethics right now, it's going to cost me. I have seen James Quintana do that, and it did cost him. And to this day, he will tell you it's worth it. I have had to do the same, and I have other friends who have had to do the same, and it cost a lot. But I'm really glad that I did. Now that the smoke is clear, the debris has settled, and I can still see what's standing after the earthquake, it was worth it. All right, you guys still with me? We're still on track? All right. Again, John Maxwell, there are really only two important points when it comes to ethics. The first is the standard to follow. There has to be a standard. And it can't be my standard. It's a standard that all of us can look at and say that is an ethical moral standard. And the second, that's where it comes home, is the will to follow that standard. So first we have to accept that a long time ago, a set of standards were written that set up the moral conduct for all of us. And that can be a little bit of a hard pill to swallow. But the harder one is, okay, that being true, are we willing to follow that standard and uphold ethical moral foundations today, as they were in 1828, as they were before that? Tough question. All right. So picture your life as a building. Everything that you're working on, everything that you're developing, all that you're putting together is for the purpose of building this building that will stand the test of time, that will be there long after you're gone. This was your life. This is what you established. This is your legacy, if you will. Does that make sense to everybody?
Yes, sir.
All right, so if that is true, then what's that building going to look like? You looking for a shack on the beach? Something simple, one room, everything fits in there. That's going to be your accomplishment for life. Or do you want, man, a skyscraper, something huge, lights, sirens, fireworks, something big? I want to build something that will last, that will go on to the next generation, that people will look at and say, man, that was Carrie LaFramboise's life. So where are you at? What kind of building are you building? And then what are you building it on? This ethical moral foundation is the foundation, right? So I don't know how much you guys know about building a foundation, but every building has to have a solid foundation or it won't keep standing. And I have heard horror stories of major buildings, major productions, but they put much more time into the structure and the building than they did the foundation. And over time, that foundation began to erode. Cracks began to form in the foundation. And eventually that building came down. The whole thing. Didn't matter how much quality they put into the walls or the floors or the ceilings or the windows or how much money they spent on the furniture. If they didn't invest in the foundation, it's not going to hold up. Sooner or later, it's all coming down. So, any foundation guys out there? Anybody know what goes into a foundation of a building? I'm guessing no. So when I was teaching this to the patrol academies and to the detention academies, to the corrections academies, I taught this same fundamental PowerPoint, slightly changed, but taught them the same principles. And I would ask, and there would always be somebody in there. Yeah, my dad was a builder. No, I was a builder before I become a cop. No, I'm a builder now while I'm being a cop. Okay, great. So here's what they told me. The foundation changes, the mixture for the foundation, the formula, if you will, changes depending on how big the building is going to be, how tall it's going to be, what kind of weather it's going to face, what the soil is made up of. That changes the formula for how they're going to build the foundation. And there's a lot of science that goes into it. So it has to be built to a specific standard depending on what you're going to build on top of it. Does that make sense? If that's true, and it's very specific, then what kind of ingredients go into your foundation? Now, this may be completely off base for you. This may not be something that you espouse, but I'm just going to read for you some of the things that I found in the Bible that make up that solid foundation. So just listen to me a minute. Bear with me. If this is not your thing, that's okay. I just want to read it. A blameless heart, temperate, sober-minded, of good behavior, hospitable, able to learn. There's a good one. Able to teach, not violent, not greedy, gentle, not quarrelsome, not covetous, one who rules his own house well, not a novice, one who guards his heart, one who speaks of wisdom and talks of justice, one who keeps his heart with all diligence. Then a couple more quotes. Put away from you a deceitful mouth and put perverse lips far from you. Ponder the path of your feet and let all of your ways be established. Do not turn to the right or to the left. Remove your foot from evil. A man will be satisfied by with good by the fruit of his mouth. He who guards his mouth preserves his life. A good man out of the good treasure of his heart brings forth good, and an evil man out of the evil treasure of his heart brings forth evil. For out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. That is just a very small snapshot of what's in there, but those are some very challenging things to me to be pouring into my foundation and to be building into my life. And when I start not doing these things, when I start missing the point on these things, then I'm putting cracks in my foundation. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And dealing with those cracks in the foundation is pretty challenging. So here's the basic question I have for you. Is the foundation you're building designed to withstand the pressures of the career that you're in, the life that you're living, and the pressures that you're facing? We're building our career. We're working on training. You guys are working on improving your companies and your investigation skills and the skills of your employees and all of those things, and that's good. But how much time are we spending thinking about what foundation is all this sitting on? Whether it's your company or your life, I think it's worth reflecting. Do you have different foundations? I've got one foundation that I present to my mom, who's in heaven, so now she sees everything and she knows where I lied to her about my foundation. I got another presentation that I present to my wife. Then I've got another one that I present to the business world. And when I'm all by myself, there's this other foundation. Do you have different foundations? Because I can tell you, it's not going to work. The building's not going to hold up. Tough question. Are there cracks in the foundation already where you've already compromised your ethical moral principles? Hey, Carrie, I've got a standard of ethical moral principles taught by my grandfather, maybe by my father, maybe by my mother. It's been established, and I know what those principles are, but over the course of time, maybe we put some cracks in there. Maybe we have not maintained that ethical moral foundation. What do we do then? How do we fix that? I'm not sure I can tell you. I can give you some ideas, but I know what we do in the real world with a building. When it's found out that the foundation is faulty, there's cracks in your foundation, man, we just went down there and we looked, there's cracks. We've got to do some repair work. If we want that building to continue to stand, then we've got to get in there, reinforce that foundation, build it back up, and allow it to start functioning like it was designed to function. And that can be really hard. If we haven't done it right, that can be hard. So in building that foundational standard of ethical moral behavior, what are the non-negotiables? What are things that we just can't compromise on?
Honesty.
Okay. I've got a challenge for you because I know what I see in my world. How many times is that violated on a regular basis in the doing of business? I agree with you. Honesty is a major part, has to be a major part of that foundation. But if it's in there, then we have to be honest. And there are times where we come up with creative reasons why, well, I just can't right now. In this situation, I can't be. And so it's okay. Can I tell you that every time you violate the standards of your ethical moral foundation, that's a crack. And it may be just a hairline crack. It may be so small, nobody's going to see it, but it's still a crack. All right, honesty. Got any more?
Don't sleep with your clients.
I think that's a great one. And I could see where that would really cause some major cracks in the foundation.
Oh, darn.
Yep. I think that's a good one. That would be moral behavior, ethical behavior, treating others better than we treat ourselves, thinking of others instead of ourselves. Good. So if there are non-negotiables, mandatory things in our foundation, then those are like the roots of a tree, right? I haven't seen it yet in April, but I'll probably see it sometime in May or maybe June when these winds come up and you're driving down the Boise streets and there's this great big tree and it's fallen over. You ever notice, if you look at the base of the tree, there's not this huge root system. There was not this great big beam of a root that held that tree in place like the ones that you see in the picture. It's these tiny little spindly roots. That's one of the reasons that tree blew over when the winds of life began to blow. So in establishing that ethical moral foundation, these are the roots of the tree that keep me stable when the wind blows. Have you worked with somebody who has that strong moral fiber, that strength of integrity, strength of honesty, strength of being willing to confront people on behavior that is not ethical because they want to help that person, not because they want to point out that something's wrong. They want to help them. Hey, if you keep doing that, your life is going to be a mess. Don't do that. When you work with somebody like that, how do you feel?
Burdened.
Convicted a little bit? Okay. What is your trust level with those people?
Not much.
If the ethical moral foundation is in place and it's solid, we have a tendency to trust those people because they're going to do what they said. But if their ethics are worse than mine, if they're spotty, if they're sketchy, if I can't see that solid foundation, how much am I going to rely on those people and what they say? We won't do the examples. We'll skip that part. All right, list the world's 5 wealthiest people for me. Go.
Bezos. Quintana.
I've often suspected about it.
The Microsoft guy, Bill.
Gates, yeah.
Yes, Bill Gates. Good.
The Twitter guy.
Elon
Yep.
Musk.
Elon. What about somebody in Saudi Arabia? For
Oh,
sure.
yeah. Bunch of
Oh,
sheiks.
yeah. Lots
If
of
we're
money there.
talking money, that is.
Yeah.
All right, not bad. List the 3 wealthiest counties in the United States.
90210. What is it? I don't know, but I know something about 90210. Sun Valley, not Sun Valley. Maybe Sun Valley.
Ah,
Valley.
three. Manhattan, whatever that one is.
Okay,
LA.
Yeah.
LA. All right,
Orange
Okay.
County.
Orange County. You know what's interesting? The ones that have the most money, I train down in California, and they are the worst for dirty and
Mm.
corrupt and homeless. And just a side note there. How about the last 5 Miss America winners?
No clue.
Yep.
The men we just mentioned, their wives or girlfriends.
Very possibly.
Just being facetious.
Name 4 Nobel or Pulitzer Prize winners.
Barack Obama.
Gandhi.
Oh my gosh. We should know this, you guys. This is terrible.
I think we got his point.
All right, let's move on. 8 Grammy Award winners.
Grammy, that's music. Whitney Houston.
Okay,
Michael Jackson.
okay.
Tina Turner, God rest her soul.
Oh, yep.
Grammy. Probably John Legend. Throw him in.
Okay.
Elvis. And I don't.
All right, we got 5. That's not bad.
Okay.
That's not bad. And 10 World Series winners.
Chicago Cubs.
Got the Yankees.
Houston Astros.
In '86, I think it was the Mets.
So
I
you know that
graduated
because
here.
you're old.
Thanks.
Guys, these are the things that the world tells us are important. Money, fame, beauty, worldly accomplishments. And we're struggling to know who actually won them, even though the world tells us that's what's important. Tell me a teacher who helped you in school.
Oh, yeah. That's good.
I got a list.
Me too.
Okay, so that one comes right up, right? I remember those people. Name 2 people you trust enough to confide in. Do you have them?
Mhm. Absolutely.
If you can come up with those people right off the top of your head, that speaks to your ethical moral foundation and who you hang out with. And if not, then maybe you should get some new friends. I don't know. Name someone who makes you feel worthwhile. Got some names?
Mhm.
Give an instance when a stranger helped you.
Mm.
List 3 reasons why you love the person that you love the most. And I'm going to make you do that one. Give me 3 reasons. I'll tell you about my wife. She's in the other room and I don't know if she can hear me or not, but she is my best friend. She has put up with my stuff for 43 years now and given me 4 beautiful daughters. And she knows me better than anybody but God. And she still likes me. She's an incredible lady. All right, your turn. 3 things.
Well, my husband is same 45 years, and I would say because he is honest, he is ethical, and he is kind.
Good. Anybody else?
Well, that's gotta be my wife too. She stood by me 24 years in law enforcement,
Wow.
and she still loved me through it, which I was shocked. She's given me 2 wonderful kids, and she loves me even though I have faults.
Awesome. That's good. Come on, James.
Oh, yeah, I go my wife, because she is the best mother on earth. She is strong, she's hardcore, she's ethical, she's honest, she's faithful, and she is literally what I have built my life around her. Because what I saw in her, no man, no woman, nobody could approach. And together we have built a very strong life. So she's everything that I could ever want in a person, besides being my best friend, a lover, confidant. She is a shining star. Kind of like your wife, Carrie.
Amen. Mine's better, but kind of.
Into that. Yeah.
We have both married far above our station, my friend. Name 2 people who have overcome major obstacles and were successful. You can list yourself if you're one of those. I can tell you that my mother was married 11 times. And none of them really wanted to be a father figure to me. And I have 4 beautiful daughters, and by God's grace and by my wife's ability, our daughters are awesome. And by a miracle from God, my daughters still today think I'm cool. I was able to become a great father, even though that's not how I started out. God did that for me. Who do you know that has overcome major obstacles and become successful? See, these are things that are right there. They resonate with us. We know these names. We're struggling to come up with rich people, with beautiful people, with the people that are recognized by the world as having accomplished something. But we all have those people that God put in our lives that were there for us when we needed them. And they are the ones that are stronger in our minds, more established in our minds than all these other things. And 9 times out of 10, they have a strong ethical moral foundation, or they wouldn't be able to do what they do. My wife would not be able to put up with me without that. So that's the proof of the importance of that foundation. All right, what are some of the character traits that are absolutely essential in becoming a member of your team, your company, that group that you're building? What are some of the character traits that are absolutely essential? This is what you look for.
Willingness to learn.
Good.
As retired law enforcement, most of our team is retired law enforcement, and you figure if somebody's been able to get through a career of 25, 30 years, then they've generally got a pretty good grasp of ethics. So,
Good,
and
Yep.
plus extremely experienced.
right. Yep, good. Okay. So we're looking for that ethics, honesty, integrity, ability to learn, ability to handle life. Anything else that is essential to become a member of your team?
I think honesty, and the ability to see through bullshit. Wisdom,
Wisdom,
solid foundation.
okay? Life experience, discernment.
Absolutely.
Hard work ethic.
Mhm,
Wow, that's a hard one to find right now.
mhm.
It is, but I agree. These things are all essential to become a part of a team that I want to be on. Why do you look for these qualities?
Yeah, because it makes work smoother when you don't have to deal with a bunch of baloney in a person's personality.
Think about what you just said. When I look for people who have a strong ethical, moral foundation, things go smoother. Business goes better. Relationships are built stronger. That's pretty powerful.
Mhm.
Sometimes we have to go back and rethink why we're doing what we're doing. Maybe some of you have been doing this for a while. And when you first started and you were fresh at it, you had these foundations, you had these goals, you had this passion for doing what was right, for helping other people. And sometimes we have to revisit that. Is that passion still there? Am I still looking for those kind of people? Or am I looking for people who will just fill a spot, do a job? When I take a responsibility on, do I still apply ethical, moral foundations to doing that responsibility, or do I just check a box? I was in California working with some guys on firearms, and they're guys that we have trained for, man, I think at least 5, 6 years I've been with them. My partner was training them before that, and they're still struggling with the fundamentals and the basics. And so I just sat them all down and said, hey, before we start shooting, why are you here? Why'd you show up to training today? Because they made me. Okay. So you have to be here anyway. So let me ask you again, why are you here? What are you going to do with this next 4 hours, 5 hours on the range? Just going to check a box? Or do you want to get something out of it? You want to build yourself? Do you want to improve yourself? Do you want to be better than you were? And I would challenge all of us on this call with the same thing. Are you still trying to improve you? Make yourself better? Or have you arrived and you're just coasting, and all those other people, I got these people, they work for me, they do the job. I'm the head of the company now. I put in my time. Well, that's good. That's commendable. But I think what I have seen over the years is as soon as we stop growing, stop learning, and stop changing, not only are we no longer productive, but we also begin to fade in that ethical, moral foundation area. It's just what I've seen. It may not be accurate for everybody, but I think there's an important point to looking back and saying, this is what I'm looking for in my people, and this is why that's important in them, and I need to be the example of that. If I want them to do it, I have to do it. That's fair, right? What are the responsibilities that you guys do on a day-to-day basis, or those that work for you do? What are your responsibilities? I know, weird questions in an ethics class.
Well, I seek the truth for my clients.
Good.
I think my job is to build a relationship, build on trust, and to have a mutual goal, a objective that we can both agree upon, and that we're willing to give all and be transparent to accomplish it. And it involves basically a lot of trust and transparency and hard work to get to it. So I think that's a responsibility that I make sure my clients know that it's a team effort. And if it fails, we failed as a team.
Sounds like you're looking for much more than just to fulfill one job or to get one paycheck. This is what they want, so I'm going to give it to them. I'm going to move on. You're building for something much more solid and long lasting, that sounds like, and it's a lot more work. Why do you do that?
Because I made a decision to surround myself with positive people and to live by certain standards. And I do it in my clients because there's lots of investigators out there. As a matter of fact, I have a list of numbers I give them. And I told them I'm more expensive than most because I like doing one job and doing it right. So would you like a list?
Good. All right. Can these responsibilities be accomplished without a strong ethical moral foundation?
No.
I know in my world, the answer is no. They can't be. So if that sound foundation is cracked or starting to slip, then my whole business, everything that I'm doing, my profession, my reputation, all of those things are starting to slip right along with it. All right, we all have reasons for why we do what we do. In any career that you're in, you can't lose sight of your why. So quick question, why did you start this? Why did you get into this work?
Saw where police departments were overwhelmed and dealing with all sorts of issues. And seemed like, I mean, that's of course what it's evolved to now. What I got to is I met with a bunch of corrupt governments and people that allowed this to prosper without doing the right thing, from board of directors to chiefs of police to associations. And I think it's our job, if we're going to be part of it, we got to stand for what's right. We got to call bullshit when we see it.
Good. Somebody else. Why did you do this?
Well, for me, I'm just starting because I had some lawyers that I used to work with ask me to get into it. There's not too many investigators in Lewiston, Idaho. And I just retired. Like I was telling Pat, I just retired from the sheriff's office here last month. And so I'm figuring this out. And in fact, Mr. Barnes was just on here not too long ago. He was an LPD officer. I actually worked with him a long time ago. And he started his investigations down in the Boise area. And so, yeah, that's why I'm getting into this.
Good. Good. If we lose sight of that, if we lose sight of the principles that pushed us into getting into this arena and the ethical moral foundation that was very, very prevalent when that passion was there, we can fall into a performance mentality, just checking the box, just going through the motions, and we can lose sight of what's really important. This was a long time ago, and it still impacts me. So I'll let you guys read that.
It's deep.
I have 4 daughters. I have 12 grandbabies. I would struggle with the last phrase in that paragraph. I know I would. That is a strong ethical moral foundation. I can't imagine going through that kind of grief and that kind of loss and then reaching out to help the very family. The leader of that family caused all that loss, but they were willing to reach out and help. And I think all of us would say, yeah, that's the right thing to do. But I can tell you honestly, I'm a Christian man, and God has done a lot of work in me to change me from who I used to be, and I would struggle with this.
So you think that ethical behavior includes forgiveness?
Yes, I do. One of the reasons that I say that, and I'm sorry, I forgot your name.
Pat.
Pat. One of the reasons I say that, Pat, is because I have seen unforgiveness cause bitterness and anger and hatred and a lot of behavior that is far from professional. It wounds us when we don't forgive. And it's hard to walk away from it. And if I allow unforgiveness to poison one relationship, then over time, it will poison all relationships. And I've seen that consistently in my own life, in my family's life, and in the hundreds of men that I've worked with throughout the years. I'm old, so it's a lot of guys. And I've seen it consistently. So yes, I do believe that very strongly. All right, got another one for you. Pat Tillman,
Hero.
very successful football player, making lots of money right at the peak of his career. And out of nowhere, he made a decision to stop playing football, join the military, go over and fight the fight. And then he was killed. Not going to get into the details on him dying, but this quote says a lot. What we lost in terms of a person is really something that a lot of us would like to have. Those kinds of convictions and the kind of character and attitude that he had about living life. Pat Tillman built a strong skyscraper with his life. He left a legacy. It's still standing. And I believe it's because of the foundation that Pat Tillman had that allowed that building to continue to stand. Expertise. What are you consistently and really good at? How did you get good at it? How much time did that take? Can you be depended upon in that arena when it counts? And I'm going to guess that that's all of you guys. You've invested time in your careers currently or previously. And I would say that you would say, amen. Yes, I'm good at that. I'm good at what I do, or I wouldn't do it. All right, so you got that side of it. I am a professional. I know what I'm doing. But in reality, what can you actually control? Can you control how well you do your job?
To some extent.
To a certain degree. But when other people get involved, it gets a little muddy.
Yeah.
So you do your job well. You carefully think things out, all the angles. You've done this 1,000 times. You're good at what you do. You know where you're going. Comes naturally to you. You've been training for this your whole life. You're ready. You're prepared. Nothing could possibly go wrong.
I hadn't seen that one.
I don't know if you know this or not, but beavers train their whole life to cut down trees. They're good at it. They've been doing it for generations. Been passed down from great-great-grandpa on down. We all know how to cut down trees. I would say that this is an impossibility, except it's a picture. So unless this is a murder scene, that beaver, like all of us, found out the hard way, things will not always go the way that you plan. Things will not always turn out like you expect. And if we're not careful, we can fall into what has been termed the evolution of corruption. People don't live an ethically moral life right up to the point that there's an ethical moral failure. Do you understand that? It doesn't work that way. There's a progression. Under pressure, we make an exception in our conduct and we violate our ethical moral convictions. We put a crack in that foundation under pressure. Over time, we develop unethical habits due to continued minor violations. External circumstances should never put us in a position for unethical behavior. Is that a fair statement?
Absolutely.
You guys agree with that?
Mhm. I do.
Noble cause corruption. Let's talk about that. For the sake of what we have interpreted as a noble cause, we allow small violations in our code of ethics. Now, I really do believe this. You have to be honest. You have to be a person of integrity. You have to be a person who stands for justice and the American way and all those fun things. But there are times when external pressures demand that I violate my own ethical moral conduct. You remember the slide a few slides back? Ethics is simply doing those things that need to be done, even if it's going to cost me more than I want to pay. Can I tell you that ethics were never meant to be evolving, never meant to be changing? It's a standard. There are principles of ethics that were never meant to change. Hey, the smartest one in the room just showed up.
Yes, he's going to carry on the legacy.
All right. Amen. Any action that puts hairline cracks in the foundation we're building upon is dangerous. Even if it's just a small little crack, it's dangerous. So how do we counter that? Make it a habit to always tell the truth no matter what. I have a hard question for you. Can you do that in investigations?
Well, I don't know if you have to out and out lie, but you could.
Well,
Well,
talking about how we get there. Can you do this?
I'd say yes.
Okay.
And I give my last client called me and I said, I'm sorry, I'm not going to take your case. If I did, it'd be twice the normal rate. And I require that you go see a psychologist for a month before. And that you have somebody in your family that's somewhat sane or a close friend sit in on the meetings to listen to everything that we talk about and make sure that it's in your best interest. And that's the way I do. That was very honest with her. And I've been doing business with her for a month. And it has worked wonders.
Good.
I wish I could have her on here. But so I feel yes. And I figure, what do you got to lose, client? Is it worth money? No, it's
See,
not.
that's the thing. That's the thing that we don't always do, is weigh out the long-term costs. I'm going to lose a client if I don't violate my ethical moral behavior. But if I do, then I put a crack in my foundation that's going to cost me down the road. And we look at that short term. Well, in this situation, I know I said you shouldn't lie, but I'm going to lie. I know I said you should be a person of integrity. Can I just geek out a little bit? Words are important, right?
Mhm.
What is the definition of integrity?
You're always going to be the same. My word is iron, and it will be this way, and it will be that way in a year, and it'll be that way in 10 years.
Good. Okay, I like that. So originally, or at least in one venue, integrity is a construction term. And it simply means this table that my computer is sitting on was designed with the integrity to hold up the weight that is supposed to be put on a table. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
So if you have integrity, you can hold the weight of life around you and not change, stay the same, stay consistent. That's integrity. So we tell the truth no matter what. Know the rules, the laws, and the principles you have chosen to live by. Remember when I said, what are ethics? You need to know, you need to have a definition. This is my moral code, and it does not change. If I don't know those things, or if I've forgotten them or allowed them to slip, then it's easy to miss the mark and not build that ethical moral foundation correctly. Be careful not to interpret the principles from your own perspective, because you didn't write the rules and you can't rewrite them. That's something I wish our government officials understood. They didn't write the Constitution of the United States. They can't rewrite it. They didn't write the Declaration of Independence. They can't rewrite it. And by rewriting it, they can't change what the Constitution recognized. Not that the Constitution gives us inalienable rights. It's not what it says. It says the Constitution recognizes God-given inalienable rights. And I would challenge you that ethics come from the same place. There is godly input that goes clear back to the very beginnings of creation, where God laid down the rules. And he said, live your life like this. And if you actually read what the Bible says, there are answers in there for relationships. There's answers in there for marriage. There's answers in there for how we do business. I'm not so concerned that you go to the Bible to get your rules and your ethical standards. I am concerned that you have some and that you're getting them from a reliable source. You can't dig the hole for the building that is going to be your life. Go to Kmart, buy the cheapest ingredients, throw them in the hole and call that a foundation. It's not going to hold up the building. So wherever you're drawing this ethical moral foundation from, make it quality materials. Is that acceptable? Can you guys handle that?
Yep.
All right. Beware of the I deserve this mentality. There are two things that will get me in trouble. One is when I'm thinking about doing something that probably would be a violation of my ethical moral code, and I say, well, I deserve this. I know that's dangerous for me. And when I'm talking to people and my temperature is starting to rise and my anger is starting to flare, if I ever say the words, you know what? Bad things are about to happen. That phrase, I don't use that phrase unless bad things are about to happen. I was at Post, James, after you left. I was in a meeting with the director, and one of the other coordinators, Tim Brassett, was in there with me. And the director basically said he was going to make some moves that I knew were going to destroy the integrity of our training program. And I stood up and I said, you know what? And Tim grabbed me and said, Kerry was just going to tell you that he needs a break, and I'm going to take him out in the hallway right now. Probably saved my career right there. So I got to be careful when I'm saying, you know what? And I'm also got to be careful when I say, I deserve this. That's a dangerous thing for me. So that's a trigger for me. You got to know what your triggers are that are about to send you into unethical behavior. Go ahead, James.
No,
Okay.
I just knew where you're coming from.
All right. Folks, we're living in a culture, in a world, in a society that's building their lives on a faulty foundation. And we're drastically drifting from ethics and morals and traditions, and we're being told it's old-fashioned, it's old news, it really doesn't work anymore, and you have to change. That's not true. And I'm not going to change, and I'm hoping that you won't either, and that we will be able to teach the next generation through that legacy that we build that an ethical moral foundation is critical to success. I'm hoping you do that with your workers, your co-workers, the people that you partner with on this team, and that you get that message out so the next generation hears it and can learn from it. That's what I'm hoping. There are times in life where the blood pressure goes up, where the pressure is on to make decisions that probably don't line up with that ethical moral foundation. And that's where I came up with this term, tactical pause. Stop everything. Quick tactical pause. Ask yourself these things. Do my actions and my words line up with the life principles that I've chosen to live by? Is this going to get me there? Is this going to keep that building solid down the road? Is my motive truly out of care and concern for other people, or has my deceitful heart fooled me into thinking I'm caring about other people, but what I'm about to do is pretty self-serving? You got to stop. You got to think about it, because your heart will lie to you. Your emotions will take you places you shouldn't be. If you've been alive very long at all, I'm sure you've got stories, because I've got stories of where that's happened. How will this affect the roots and the rest of my tree? How will this affect the foundation and the building that I want to build? We've got to take that tactical pause and rethink this before we open our mouth and make that greatest speech that we're going to live to regret. How will my decisions and actions today affect those around me later? Have you noticed that when you're getting ready to make a self-serving decision, you kind of cut this part out? How it will affect other people? I just want to know how it's going to affect me, and I'm going to enjoy it. It's going to be great. But I need to think about how it affects the other people. I don't know if you've heard that statement or not, the dash between the dates. And it's the dates written on your tombstone. Born on this day, dash. born on that, died on that day. The dash between the dates is the story of your life. It's what's going to be written on your tombstone. It's the legacy that we're leaving for the next generation. If you believe in heaven, you believe that you're going to end up there. What do you want to hear when you walk through the doors? Oh, you're that guy. Jesus wants to see you. I don't want to hear that. I want to hear something else. Can you do me a favor, James, and read that for me?
Yes. To every man there comes in his lifetime that special moment when he is figuratively tapped on the shoulder and offered a chance to do a very special thing, unique to him and fitted to his talents. What a tragedy if that moment finds him unprepared or unqualified for the work which would be his finest hour.
Winston Churchill, I love that quote.
Wow.
And folks, that's the legacy. And I got to be honest with you, this is what changed my life. I told you about all the dads that I had. We moved all over the United States growing up. My sister counted, I didn't. She says between grade school and high school, we moved 65 times.
Oh my.
And we did not move across the street. We never moved from one part of the city to another part. We moved 2-3 states away. It was a major move. And it happened in the middle of the night. Usually, Mom would open the door to the bedroom and say, pack up, we're leaving. We got to leave before Dad gets home. So life was pretty chaotic. Life was pretty rocky. And I remember I sat down with a pastor who was trying to help me. And he presented me with the need in my life for God. And he said something that I'll never forget. He probably thinks that the scriptures and Jesus dying for my sins was a major part of it. And it was, but it wasn't the key. The key was, he said these words, you have a purpose. God designed you to accomplish something that nobody else can do. And if you don't do it, it won't get done. But to do it, you're going to need God in your life. He's the only one who can show you how to fulfill that purpose. That changed my life at 17. I started hanging out with this pretty blonde girl, and I liked her a lot, but I wasn't going to marry her because I had seen marriages fail. Marriages always end up with arguments. Arguments end up with fights, and fights end up with people bleeding about 3 times a week. And that's the kind of guys that my mother found every time. All 11 of them. So those were my memories growing up. And the last thing I wanted to do with this pretty blonde girl was to bring her into that, because that's how all marriages end. And then I began looking at what the Bible says about marriage. You know, God's the one who invented marriage. He designed it, so he probably knows how to make it work. And this pastor walked my wife and I through that counseling and showed us how to live life, not based on what I had already seen, but on principles, ethics, morals, that foundation. And I can tell you, when my daughters, my 2 oldest, were probably 3 and 5, and we were in the front room, my wife was sitting on the couch, I was wrestling with my girls on the ground, we were laughing, giggling, and having a great time. And I stopped. And I looked at my wife. I said, you know what? I wish I could have had a dad like me. But I wasn't saying, look what I've accomplished, look what I did. Man, I came from mud and look what I've built. I was acknowledging that God got a hold of me, built that foundation in my life, showed me the importance of not putting cracks in that foundation, and it was working. My daughters were growing up in a good home. They didn't have to experience what I experienced. 3 of my 4 daughters found great men and married them, and they have given us 12 grandbabies. And they're all living their lives the way my wife and I taught them, because that foundation is in place in their life. And that's why I have a passion for this, and I want everybody to hear it. You may not agree with everything that I'm saying, but please don't disregard the principle of foundation. If it's not strong, if it's not solid, It's not going to hold up, and everything else you're building is going to fall. So let's not build that way.
Excellent.
That makes sense?
Very good.
James, that's all I got, brother.
No, that's all we needed to hear. Do we have any questions?
Well, I got a question for Ken. Ken, you said you have law enforcement officers or retired law enforcement officers working for you.
Huh?
How, so if you're well known in the, like here, I'm very well known in my area.
Mhm.
And the first thing they see is a law enforcement officer. How does your guys deal with that part? Because I've always been told to be straightforward when I introduce myself on a case. If people look at me kind of weird because they recognize me from Facebook or they recognize me from the sheriff's office, to be straightforward and honest with them and tell them that I am an ex-law enforcement officer. I retired, but I'm now working for myself as this. Do you have any issues, or have you had any issues with your people there in Oregon?
Oh, I don't do criminal defense. So
Okay.
that makes that really easy.
Okay.
And then all my work is really done with corporations, and they love the experience. So I don't have any problems. I mean, and then I list all my experience and Sean's experience on the website. So
Okay.
I also say, if somebody doesn't list their experience in writing, they don't have any. So, when they're PI shopping. So it's
Thank you.
been great. I don't have any problems.
Thank you. James?
Yeah, I go with that. I was listening to your question, and of course, we're talking about ethics. One thing I think is the most important thing to do, and ask you a question: why did you go into law enforcement?
That is a good question. Kind of followed my uncle's footsteps, and listening to him when I was younger, I knew exactly I knew exactly what I wanted to do at 8 years old.
And
I
what
just didn't know the Lord was going to bring me to a place called Lewiston, Idaho to do it.
good. Now, what did you see in your uncles? What characteristics did they have?
He was just this larger than life. I mean, he used to tell all these stories about going places, taking the bad guys to jail. And he actually came, when we moved to Seattle, Washington, he came with 4 of his compadres from Hawaii. He actually worked for the Honolulu Police Department. And he came by, to Seattle to get a serial killer that ran, and they caught him in Seattle. And of course, he stayed with us the days that he was there in Seattle. And again, I just thought it was cool that he could travel, get the bad guys, take them back to Hawaii. I was like, I want to do that when I grew up. Now, the thing with him though is that he didn't tell me about the bad parts about being in law enforcement. And so as soon as I got to meet him again or see him again, once I got into law enforcement, that I went straight up to him and I said, why didn't you ever talk about the bad stuff? And I didn't use stuff, I used the other word.
Right.
When you guys were telling stories, he goes, nobody wants to hear the bad stuff. They just want to hear the good stuff. I said, but that's what I wanted to do since I was 8 years old. And like I said, I never thought it was going to be in a place called Lewiston, Idaho. So,
Right. So it sounds to me that he had a good job. It was fun. It was interesting. He was doing the right thing. And that's what inspired you to follow that. And those are good. That's what we talk about. When you talk with other people outside with investigations, I feel that's important because that's part of my character, who I am. And I wore a badge and a gun for 18 years of my life. That's important to me. And the same things that you stood for when you were in law enforcement are the same things that you stand for no matter who you're working for.
Yep.
Just because it's a defense attorney doesn't mean he wears a black hat.
Right.
You know, I'd rather see 3 guilty people go free than 1 innocent man get convicted. So when you're approached by that, you could have that one case, and you need to hear it because you're a man of integrity, you're a man of faith, and you're the right person for that job. So it's an asset to you because you still have that philosophy. You don't want to see an innocent man convicted, right?
No, not
And
at all.
all you're doing, and just like in law enforcement, you're not going to build a case to frame a guy. You're going to gather the evidence and let the evidence speak for itself. That's your prima facie right case. And that's all you're going to do. So I have found in my experience that when I meet people, I tell them, yes, this is what I did. And part of it was I shouldn't say hunted, but we prosecuted bad cops.
Mhm.
And I did that for many years. And cop is what I bleed blue to this day. But you know what? There's a line. And when you cross that line, you are not part of my foundation. And you tell the truth. You may gain stuff from your investigation that's positive and negative about your case. What is your job? To give them both.
To give them both, right?
And that's the same thing. If I work for somebody in his defense case and they're guilty of sin, I say, this is what I found. He's guilty of sin. And that's it. And then, you know, you did your job. You did what was right.